been muted, please keep yourself on mute for now. But we encourage you to have a look at the faces around, and if you don't have your video on and if you have the bandwidth for it, pop it on there. If you go to the top right hand, you can click between speaker view and gallery view, and if you click on the gallery view, scroll or put your mouse to the right hand side of all your lovely images, and you can scroll through the hundreds of you, and I'm sure you'll see folks on the call today who you recognize. So nice to be able to see and connect with each other at this time. Chief Joe Pierre is on the phone joining us today, but Colin does have an image you can see of Joe that we'll share shortly. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a Zoom or a chat button. You can click on that, and some people have been chiming in and welcoming and saying hello, so feel free to use that. Colin and I will monitor that, and we will check for questions, and there will be an opportunity at the end for some questions to be asked to Chief Joe Pierre today. We'll be recording the session and make it available. We'll send it out to all registrants following the webinar presentation here. So with that, I think that's our technical 101. Great to have you, and I'll pass it back to Colin.
Great, thanks. Before I introduce Chief Joe Pierre, we just wanted to take a moment. We thought it would be good. Some people I see in the chat have already done this, but we just wanted to take sort of half a minute to acknowledge the land, or the Indigenous land or territory you're on today. So in the chat function, if you could just sort of put that land or territory where you're coming from today, or where you're on today, that would be great. We'll just give about 30-45 seconds for you to put that into the chat feature. That's great. They'll probably keep coming for another few seconds, but appreciate folks sharing that. It's great to see where everyone's coming from. Going to introduce our speaker today. Joe Pierre was raised in the community of Akwim, formerly known as the St. Mary's Indian Reserve, and is a citizen of the Ktunaxa Nation. He attended the University of Calgary in the Fine Arts, and there met several First Nations people interested in theater, and they collaborated together to form the Crazy Horse Theater Company. The company mounted several productions in Calgary, all of which were written by Aboriginal writers. Joe also worked for a season with the CBC production North of 60, and he was a storyteller at the very first Proctor Storytelling Festival, and has presented at several other festivals throughout the Kootenays. Currently, he is employed by School District 5, Southeast Kootenay, and is a member of the Board of Directors for the First Nations Education Steering Committee. Joe served as a counselor for the St. Mary's Indian Band for 8 years, and was a member of the Board of Governors for the College of the Rockies for 6 years. In the fall of 2016, Joe was elected back to the Akwim Council, this time in the capacity of Chief Counselor. I had the privilege of meeting Chief Joe Pierre in 2018 at the ECOM conference in the Kootenays, and during a special ceremony, he individually greeted each attendee at that conference. So we're excited to welcome Chief Joe Pierre today, and Chief Joe, I'll pass it over to you.
Good morning to everyone. Hukakshik nitstash ana aki nasuk and susapias. My name is Nitstash Ana. My English name is Joe Pierre, and I am chief of the community of Akam. Ho sokashkokani nasan mietki. I'm very happy today. I'm very grateful for today. I'm happy and grateful for this opportunity to be online with all of you this morning. I'm happy that I was given this invitation to speak with all of you, and I'm grateful that we've been able to come together. Unfortunately, though, this morning I'm experiencing a little bit of technical difficulty. Over the last few weeks, I've become what I thought was very good and comfortable at operating and living in the Zoom world. And for whatever reason this morning, it decided to not treat me well. So I am grateful to the technology that we have and the ability that we have to connect with one another, as I have been doing with people from my nation, but also people from across the province of BC over these last few weeks, trying to continue on with the work that it is that we have in front of us. I'm very grateful this morning to Colin and Duncan and the Community to Classrooms group, all three of them, for hosting this. I'm grateful to each and every one of you this morning for taking the time to sit with me and listen. I hope that my words will maybe transport you or take you away from this craziness for just a little while. I'm also grateful to Napika, the Creator, for watching over the people of my nation. It's been difficult dealing with COVID these last number of weeks, but I'm so grateful that we haven't had to deal with anyone in our nation becoming sick with this that is happening. But I'm also so very grateful to Napika for bringing life, new life to us. Just yesterday afternoon, I gained a new niece. My brother, his name is Dean, and his partner Kristen gave birth to a new baby just yesterday, and she doesn't have a name yet. I've asked if what her name was, and the story that I heard is that Dean told the nurse, when the nurse was asking what is the name for the baby, he said, well, right now this is baby number 2. So my little niece, baby number 2, I just want to acknowledge, just so grateful to Napika for helping her to come into the world yesterday. I'm also very, very grateful to the mothers, my mother in particular, but also the mother of my child. I'm just so grateful to all the moms out there and all the extra work and effort that they have had to put in over these last number of weeks. So today, my plan is to share with you the Ktunaxa Creation Story, or the story of creation that we Ktunaxa tell. The reason why I want to tell this story is because it is very dear to my heart. This story was given to me by my grandparents. My grandmother on my mother's side of the family, her name was Malian, and my grandfather, his name was Andrew Michel. When I was just a very young boy, Andrew used to share this story with me, and I'm very, very grateful to him for giving me this story. He passed, though, when I was just a young boy, and it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I started to hear the story once again. This time it was my grandmother Malian sharing the story with me, and so I'm so very grateful to her. Also, too, I would like to mention at this time a man from our nation who's no longer with us. We used to know him as Nifsik Aksam. His Ktunaxa name was Nifsik Aksam. In English, he was known as Wilfred Jacobs. I'm so very grateful to Wilfred for all of the work that he did in his lifetime, especially the sharing of this story, the Ktunaxa story of creation. It was Nifsik Aksam that took the risk of actually writing our story down. And so today, after I'm finished speaking, if you would like to see the story written, you can find it at ktunaxa.org. So that's Ktunaxa, Ktunaxa.org. you will find the written version of this story as written by Ktunaxa Wilfred Jacobs at our website under the pull-down menu, Who We Are. I also want to give a shout out right now to the current storytellers of the Ktunaxa Nation. There are many storytellers in our nation, and some of them that come to mind for me this morning are people like Bonnie Eugene, Herman Alpine, Francis Auld, Alfred Joseph. I'm so grateful to my fellow storytellers within the nation. You all inspire me very, very much. And so, the Ktunaxa story of creation. My grandmother used to start this story by saying it's a story that takes place in a time when the animals ruled the world. It's a story that takes place before there were Aksmaknik, human beings on this earth. It's a story that takes place a long time ago when the Tuxkamna, the animals, ruled the earth. Now at this time, a long time ago, those animals, they were in charge of the land. They looked after the land, and they talked about, they always were talking about times in the future times to come. One day, Napika, this is our Ktunaxa name for the Creator. Napika, the Creator, sent out word to all of the Nasukan at that time, all of the chiefs at that time, that there was to be a gathering, a meeting, that Napika had something very, very important that needed to be shared with all of the Nasukan. And so, this came to be. This gathering happened. All of the Nasukan, of all of the living beings of the world, they came together for this meeting with Napika. And when all of the Nasukan were there, Napika stood before them and said, I have something very, very important that I need to tell you today. And I have something important that I need to ask you. Now, the thing that I have to tell you is this. Soon, very, very soon, the Aksmaknik, the human beings, will be here on the earth. The Aksmaknik, the human beings, are coming to the earth, and they will be here very, very soon. And my question for you, the question that I have for each and every single one of you Nasukan, is I want to know what it is that you will offer the human beings when they come here to the earth. What it is that you will do for the human beings when they come here to the earth. Well, one of the first Nasukans, one of the first chiefs to stand up was Tsupka. Tsupka, the chief of the deer, stood up and said, will I offer myself to the human beings? I offer my whole self to the human beings. I offer my flesh for food, my skin for clothing, my bones and my antlers for tools for the human beings. I offer my whole self to the Aksmaknik, to the human beings. As long as they remember to sing my song and say my prayer, I will always be there for them. And so it went. The other Nasukans, they started to stand up as well. One of the next chiefs that stood up was Nupku, the bear. Nupku, the chief of all the bears, stood up and said, well, I offer myself to the human beings. I offer my whole self to the human beings. I offer my flesh for food, my skin for clothing and for shelter. And if the human beings ever need my help spiritually, I will be there for them, as long as they sing my song and say my prayer. I will always be there for them. And so it went. Now, as you can imagine, there were so many Nasukans of all of the living beings there, and they were all wanting their turn to stand up and say what it is that they would do for the human beings. Now, some of those Nasukans that stood up said, I will have nothing to do with the human beings. I will stay away from them as much as I possibly can. They will hardly ever see me. I will hardly ever see them. Now, one of the Nasukans that had this message was Swa. Swa, the cougar, the mountain lion. Swa said, I will have nothing to do with the human beings. I will stay away from them as much as I can. But if the human beings ever need my help spiritually, I will be there for them, as long as they remember to sing my song and say my prayer. And so it went. Now, pretty soon, the bird chiefs were joining in. They were standing up and saying what they would do for the human beings, what they would give to the Ktunaxa. And the fish chiefs were standing up saying what they would do for the human beings. And they all had that same message. Sing our song, say our prayer, and we will always be there. And so it went. Now, not so long after that, it was the time for the plant chiefs to start standing up. The chiefs of all the different plants. Chawiach, the huckleberry, Chawiach stood up and said, oh, well, I offer myself to the human beings. I offer myself, my whole self to the human beings for food and for medicine. As long as the human beings remember to say my song and say my prayer, I will always be there for them. And so the plant chiefs were standing up, offering themselves to the human beings for food and for medicine and fiber to make clothing and rope. And so it went. Pretty soon after that, the trees were standing up. All of the trees, the Nasukans for the trees were standing up, offering themselves for building material and tools. And then the Nasukans for the rocks started to stand up. That's right. The rocks were there as well at this meeting, because remember, every living being of the world was there, represented by their Nasukan. And the rocks are alive. The rocks are alive. And their Nasukan stood up and said, we offer ourselves for building material and tools, as long as the human beings remember to sing our song and say our prayer. And so it went. Now, as you can imagine, this meeting would go on for a long, long time. In fact, this meeting went on for weeks because there were so many Nasukans there speaking on behalf of all the living beings of the world, saying what it is that they would do for the Ktunaxa, for the human beings that were coming to the earth. Now, at the same time that this meeting was happening, there were these two sisters, these two little birds, these two sisters that decided that they were going to go fishing. They didn't need to be at that meeting. They weren't Nasukan, they weren't chiefs. And so these two little sisters, these two little birds decided that they were going to go fishing down on the Kootenai River at this place known as Akankami. Akankami, today known in English as Bonner's Ferry, down in the northern part of the state of Idaho. And so these two little birds, they went to the Kootenai River at this place known as Akankami. And when the two birds got to the river's edge, the one bird, the older sister, said to the younger sister, hey, you know what? I think if I got out there further into the river, into the water, I think I could catch bigger fish. And so that big sister, she started to wade out into the water. And as she was wading out into the water was getting deeper on her, and her little sister stayed on shore. And her little sister started to freak out. No, don't go in the water, don't go in the river. The Yawunik might get you. Well, the Yawunik. The Yawunik was this giant water monster that lived in the Kootenai River and the Columbia River. Because at this time when this story happens, the Kootenai River and the Columbia River, they're joined together in one big water system, and the Yawunik lives in these two rivers. The Yawunik is a giant. The Yawunik is a big, huge giant with a giant appetite. And Yawunik would eat anything that came down to the river for a drink. Kishkashi, that's an elk. If an elk were to come down to the river for just a little drink, well, Yawunik would eat him. It didn't matter how big. Even Nupko, even if there was a bear that came down to the river for a drink, well, Yawunik would eat him too. It didn't matter how big, or how small for that matter. Even if the smallest of small little animals, Intsuk, that's a mouse, even if little Intsuk were to come down to the river for a drink, well, Yawunik would eat him too. And so, as you can imagine, the animals, the Tuxkamna, they were all afraid of the Yawunik. You might say the Yawunik was a bit of a menace. No, don't go in the river. Don't go in the river. The Yawunik might catch you. Oh, don't worry about me. I'm okay. I just want to get a little further out here in the water where it's deeper, because I think I could catch bigger fish. And so that big sister, she keeps on wading out into the water, and the water's getting deeper on her as she goes. The little sister's on shore, and she's really freaking out now. No, don't go in the river, the Yawunik. Eventually, that little sister decides she must get her big sister out of the river. And so that little sister goes off into the water as well. And just as she's about to grab her big sister and pull her big sister out of the river, the Yawunik comes up out of the water and swallows them both and swims away. They're gone. Well, these two sisters, they had a brother, and their brother's name is Yamakpas. Yamakpas. He's a red-headed woodpecker. Yamakpas, the woodpecker, finds out that his sisters have been swallowed up by the Yawunik. And he's sad. As you can imagine, he's sad that he's lost his sisters. But more than that, he's mad. He's mad that his sisters are gone. He's mad at the Yawunik for taking his sisters, and he decides something must be done about that Yawunik. Something must be done. And I'm going to be the one to do it. But I might need a little bit of help. And so Yamakpas thinks about it for a moment, and then he remembers Nakhmooktzin, the giant. Yes, I could ask Nakhmooktzin, the giant, for some help. Well, Nakhmooktzin the giant. This is a giant of the land. Nakhmooktzin the giant. He's so big, he's so tall that if he were to stand upright, he would hit his head on the ceiling of the sky. And so therefore, Nakhmooktzin, he travels around on his hands and knees. Nakhmooktzin the giant. He's Nasukin for all of the land animals. He's chief of the land animals. And so Yamakpas finds Nakhmooktzin and tells him the story about his sisters and how the Yawunik has taken his sisters and how he wants to do something about that Yawunik. And Nakhmooktzin agrees. Nakhmooktzin says, yes, you're right. We should do something about that Yawunik. That Yawunik has been breaking the law. That Yawunik has been going around just killing at will, killing whoever he wants to kill. And he's been consuming as much as he wants. He's breaking the law. We should form a hunting party and hunt him down and kill him. Oh, yes, that's a great idea. Yes, sure, okay. And so word goes out that this hunting party is being formed. And there's animals that come from all around to join that hunting party. And one of the first ones to come is Skinkoots. Skinkoots the coyote. Oh, that coyote comes running along. Hey, I heard you guys are putting together a hunting party. Can I come with you? Please let me come with you. Please, please. Look, 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 look. I brought my spear. I brought my spear. It's a really good spear. I made it all by myself. I promise. It's a really good spear. Please let me come on that hunting party. Please. And so, yes, of course, Skinkoots, you can join the hunting party. And so this hunting party is formed. And they get word. They heard that the Yawunik had been sighted now up by a Kiskanuk. A Kiskanuk. It's this place up north of where I am right now. The two lakes, Windermere Lake and Columbia Lake. A Kiskanuk. And so the hunting party, they go up there. And they find the Yawunik. Sure enough, they find the Yawunik in the Columbia River. And so they split up. There's birds flying above and animals on both sides of the river. And they start to chase that Yawunik. And that Yawunik starts to swim towards the south as hard and as fast as he can. He swims towards the south from the Columbia River right into the Kootenai River. Because remember, at this time when this story happened, the Kootenai and the Columbia, they're joined together in one big water system. And so that Yawunik is able to swim from the Columbia River right into the Kootenai River, and he continues swimming towards the south. And that hunting party is chasing him. And Skinkoots, that coyote, he's part of the hunting party. He's running along on the riverbank with everyone else, but Skinkoots, he's not really paying attention. Skinkoots, he's more interested in the sights and the sounds and the smells. Oh, those smells. I mean, he's a coyote, right? Hey, smell over there. Oh, that's a really good smell. Oh, that's a good smell over there, too. And so Coyote is not paying attention to the trail in front of him. And so Coyote trips and falls. He tumbles and he splashes down. He lands right in the river. As soon as he hits the river, he starts to freak out. Help, help, please, please get me out of the river. Please get me out of the river. The Yawunik's going to get me. Help me, please. And so Nahmooktson the giant reaches over and grabs up this big handful of wassa. And he reaches out towards Skinkoots. And he says, here, Skinkoots, grab on. And so Skinkoots grabs onto the wassa, and Nahmooktson pulls him to the shore. And then Nahmooktson the giant takes a look down, and he sees that he's got this handful of wassa. And so he says, we will name this place Wassa, so that we can remember where we saved Skinkoots out of the river using wassa. Wassa, by the way, is a Ktunaxa word for a type of plant. In English, this plant is known as the horsetail, rush, or reed. In Ktunaxa, we call it wassa. And that place was named Wassa, and to this very day, people still call that place Wassa. A Ktunaxa name for that place. And the chase continued. They continued chasing that Yawunik towards the south. The Yawunik is swimming as hard and as fast as he can in the Kootenai River towards the south. He goes past that place where the St. Mary's River joins the Kootenai River, known as Akam in our Ktunaxa language. We call that place where those two rivers join Akam. That is my home community, the place where I grew up. And that Yawunik continues swimming towards the south. And that party continues chasing. Until not so far away from where I am sitting right now, towards the east, there was this small little fella sitting beside the Kootenai River. This tiny little fella. And he stops the hunting party. Hey, whoa, whoa, stop, stop, stop. Where are you going? What are you doing? And so the hunting party, they stop. And they talk to this little fella. And the little fella says, oh, that sounds like a very good idea. May I join the hunting party with you? And they say to this little fella, yes, of course you can. You join up with us, Mayuk. You can come. And so Nahmooktson the giant says, we should name this place Mayuk so that we can remember where the weasel joined the hunting party. Mayuk is the Ktunaxa name for the weasel. And so the weasel joined the hunting party, and they continued on. Now that Yawunik is swimming as hard and as fast as he can down towards the south. all the way down to this place we call Uxwak, which today is known as Libby, down in the state of Montana. Uxwak is the Ktunaxa name for that place. Now, down there in that part of the world, we call it Ktunaxa. This is the land of the coyote, northwestern Montana, northern Idaho. Ktunaxa, the land of the coyote. And the Kootenai River is now flowing towards the west. The Kootenai River flows past that place we call Atunkami, the place where those two sisters went fishing, Bonner's Ferry, and now it's flowing towards the north. And the Yawunik is swimming as hard and as fast as he can, and that hunting party, they continue to chase him. Yawunik swims into this part of the world that we refer to as Atspu Amakas. Atspu Amakas is the land of the wolverine. Atspu Amakas, today known as the Creston Valley area, just south of Kootenai Lake. And that Yawunik swims in to Kootenai Lake, and that hunting party they continue chasing. And that Yawunik swims past this place we call Akyamchup in our language. Akyamchup. Today, that place is known as Nelson. Nelson, BC. Akyamchup translates to the place where you can see to the bottom of the water. It's so clear. Akyamchup. And so Yawunik swims past there and continues swimming as hard and as fast as he can towards the west, eventually getting to that place where the two rivers join together once again, the Kootenai and the Columbia. Kiksifuk, we call it. Kiksifuk. Today in English, people know it as Castlegar. Now over in that part of the world, we call it Mitskakas Amakas, the land of the chickadee. Mitskakas Amakas, today known as the West Kootenai. And that Yawunik turns towards the north and starts swimming as hard and as fast as he can towards the north on the Columbia River. And that hunting party, when they get to the Columbia River, they turn and they start chasing towards the north. But very soon, they have to stop. Now, the reason why they have to stop this time is they have come to a place known as Akinkanuk. Akinkanuk. And the belief was that if you're traveling north on the Columbia River, when you get to Akinkanuk, you must stop. Take out your bow and arrow and aim towards the cliff. There's this big, huge cliff at Akinkanuk and a crack in that cliff. And the belief was that if you're traveling north on the Columbia River, when you get to Akinkanuk, you must take out your bow and arrow, aim towards that crack in the cliff, and shoot. And if your aim is true, if you are able to hit that crack, then you can continue your journey. It will be safe. But if you shoot and you miss, maybe you better just stop and wait for a few days. It might not be safe. Akinkanuk is the name for that place. When I was young, my grandmother told me that it translates into Arrow Rock. Arrow Rock, Akinkanuk, over there in Mitskakas Amakas, the land of the chickadee, the West Kootenays. And the chase continues. Yawunik continues swimming up towards the north, all the way north up past this place known as Tunwakin Mituk Mitskakas. Tunwakin Mituk Mitskakas, today known as Revelstoke. Up around the big bend of the Columbia River, and now Yawunik is swimming towards the north once again. Yawunik swims past this place we call Aknukhuk, which today is known as Golden, BC. Yawunik has entered into Aknukhukham Amakas, the land of the eagle, or the Columbia Valley today in English. And that Yawunik continues swimming towards the south. But very soon, that Yawunik does something that they didn't quite expect. That Yawunik just stops swimming. This is a very long journey on these two rivers. And so Yawunik has stopped swimming and is just resting in the water, barely moving at all, resting. And the hunting party, they come up and they see the Yawunik lying there in the water. And right away, Skinkoots, the coyote, please let me go get him. Let me go get him. Look, it's a good spear. I promise it's a really good spear. I made it all by myself. Please let me go get him. Okay, Skinkoots, you go get him. And so that coyote starts to sneak up on the Yawunik. And the Yawunik is lying there in the water, barely moving at all. Just the water kind of moving over its body. And Skinkoots sneaks up on that Yawunik, gets very, very close, right beside the Yawunik, raises up his spear, and just as he's about to come down with his spear, the Yawunik notices him and starts to swim, and that Skinkoots comes down with his spear and just catches the Yawunik on the fin, just grazes the fin of the Yawunik. And this little trickle of blood comes out of that fin. And that little trickle of blood, well, it leaves the river and it flows up into the mountains. And that little trickle of blood turns into a creek. And Nakhmooktsum the giant says, we will name this place Yaknosuki, so that we can remember this trickle of blood that's turned into this creek here. Yaknosuki will be the name for this place. Now, for those of you who are familiar with Aknokrucham Amakus, the land of the eagle, the Columbia Valley, you might be familiar with this tiny little hamlet of a place known as Briscoe. Well, that is where Yaknosuki is. If you know where Briscoe is, you know Yaknosuki, that little trickle of blood that has turned into that creek. And the chase continues. Yawunik gets away and continues to swim towards the south as hard and as fast as he can. And that hunting party, they continue chasing the Yawunik. And that chase continues like that for weeks. Weeks go by and they continue chasing around on those two rivers over to the west. Mitskakas Amakas, the West Kootenays, back up around the big bend of the Columbia River in the north into Aknokrucham Amakas, the land of the eagle, all the way down south once again to Skinkoots Amakas, the land of the coyote, down in northwestern Montana and northern Idaho, back up through Atspu Amakas, the land of the wolverine, the Creston Valley area, and once again back into Mitskakas Amakas, the land of the chickadee, or the West Kootenays. Around and around this chase goes for weeks, months even go by, until one day, that hunting party, they are chasing Yawunik over in the west, Mitskakas Amakas, and they are stopped. Once again, they are stopped. Now this time, they are stopped by some laughter. There's this laughter coming from somewhere, coming from the mountains. It's kind of like this big belly kind of laughter. Ho, 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 ho. And so they stop and they're looking around. Where is that laughter coming from? Ho, 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 ho. When eventually they see, sitting up on the side of the mountain, Kikum, the wise old spirit, Kikum, is sitting up there on the side of the mountain, laughing away, laughing away. And the hunting party, they stop and they say to Kikum, Kikum, what are you laughing at? And Kikum says, well, I'm laughing at you. I'm laughing at all of you, you hunting party. I've been sitting here on the side of this mountain now for weeks, watching you. Every couple of days, you guys come running past here, chasing that Yawunik. You're never going to catch him. He's too big. He's too strong. That's what's making me laugh. And then Kikum turns his attention towards Nakhmooktsum, the giant. And Kikum says, Nakhmooktsum, you giant, why don't you use your size? Use your strength. Cut across the mountains. Go to that place where the two rivers join together. Use your size and your strength and topple the mountains over there. Move the earth and cut the two rivers off from one another. And the next time Yawunik comes swimming down from the north, well, he will be trapped. He will no longer have a way to go from the Columbia River to the Kootenai River, and he will be trapped. Wow, that's a good idea. That's a great idea. Oh, that's such a good idea. Yes, let's do that. And so the hunting party, they split up. Nahmooks and the giant uses his size, and he cuts across the mountains, and he goes to that place where those two rivers join together. The rest of the hunting party, they continue chasing that Yawunik up towards the north and the big bend of the Columbia River. Nahmookson uses his size and his strength, and he moves the earth, and he cuts the two rivers off from one another, forming the Columbia Lake. And sure enough, just like Gikum said, the next time Yawunik came swimming down from the north, well, he was trapped in the newly formed Columbia Lake. He no longer had a way to get to the Kootenai River, and so he was trapped. Well, the honor of killing the Yawunik goes to Nahmookson, goes to Yamakpach. Yamakpach, the woodpecker, the brother of those two sisters, kills the Yawunik. And Nahmookson the giant takes that Yawunik from the water and starts to tear him to pieces, tearing him apart and giving out the meat to the Tuxkamna, to the animals, the living creatures, so that they can eat. And then Nahmookson the giant reaches down and grabs up the bones, the ribs of the Yawunik, and scatters them in different directions. And those bones land and turn into the hoodoos. The hoodoos that you see throughout Ktunaxa Amakas, our homelands. The hoodoos are the bones or the ribs from the Yawunik. And then Nahmookson the giant reaches down and grabs up the white swim bladder organ. And he scrunches up that white swim bladder organ and scatters it in all different directions around the world and says, this will be the white race of people. They will be large in numbers and they will be powerful. And then Nahmookson reaches down and he grabs up the black kidney. And he scrunches up that black kidney and he scatters it in all different directions around the world. And he says, this will be the black race of people. They will be large in numbers and they too will be powerful. And then Nahmookson the giant reaches down and he grabs up the roe, the eggs. And he scrunches up that roe and he scatters the roe in all different directions around the world. And he says, this will be the yellow race of people. They will be large in numbers and they too will be powerful. And then Nahmookson looks at his hands and he sees that his hands are covered in blood. And so he picks up some grass and he uses that grass to wipe the blood off his hands. And the blood and the grass fall to the ground. And Nahmookson says, this will be the red race of people. They will be small in numbers, but they too will be powerful. And then they start to realize, Nahmookson and Skinkoots and Yamakpach, they all start to realize that they are the ones to fulfill Napika's prophecy of the human beings coming to the earth. That it's because of them and what they've just done that the Aksmaknik, the human beings, will be on the earth. And they're happy. They're so happy that they could fulfill Napika's prophecy that they start to celebrate. They all start to celebrate that the human beings are coming to the earth. Nahmookson the giant is so happy that he forgets himself and he stands upright to celebrate. But he hits his head on the ceiling of the sky and he falls over and dies. Nahmookson's head went all the way down south to this place we call Tulhuchnana, which today is known as Missoula, down in Montana. And his feet, Nakhmogtson's feet, went all the way north to this place we call Yakshiki. Yakshiki, today known as the Yellowhead Pass. And his body, Nakhmogtson's body, formed the Rocky Mountains. And then Napika, the creator, Napika, said to all of those first human beings, you have just lost a giant of the land and a giant of the water. It is now your responsibility to look after the land and to look after the water. And that story was shared by the animals, by the Tuxkanna, with the human beings, the Aksmaknik. And the human beings shared that story with their children and their grandchildren. All through time, that story has been shared until, well, I'd say about 45 years ago now, my grandfather Andrew was sharing that story with me. I'm so grateful for this opportunity this morning to share that story with you. I know that at the beginning of this gathering, you were asked to acknowledge the homelands of the Indigenous people where you are at right now. And I know that when I looked at the list of people who were registered for this webinar this morning, I know that all parts of Canada are represented. I recognize people registered from all of the provinces and territories of our country. I also noticed on that list that there were a few people that were signed up from down in the United States as well. And so here in North America, we Indigenous people call the entirety of North America Turtle Island. We refer to it as Turtle Island. And so if my Zoom was working, I would have got to see that list of the Indigenous nations that were represented today on the call. I believe that the nations from coast to coast to coast are represented here today. And I want each and every one of you on this call today to know that where you are, there's a story connected to where you are. There's a story that goes back millennia, thousands of years, that is connected to the lands where you are currently today. And I want each and every one of you to know that those nations, those First Nations, those Indigenous people all across Turtle Island have storytellers like myself, like Bonnie Eugene, like Francis Auld, like Herman Alpine, who share these stories with people, who are willing to share these stories with people, especially those people that have come to live in their homelands. I am always so grateful when I'm given the opportunity to share this story with people here in Ktunaxa Amakis, in the homelands of the Ktunaxa people. Today, I am so very grateful to be given this opportunity to share our story with you across all these beautiful lands that make up Turtle Island. Hopefully this morning I was able to transport you for just a very short little period of time away from wherever it is you've been isolated these last number of weeks. Hopefully my words were able to take you here to what National Geographic has termed the jewel of the continent. This part of the continent known as the Rocky Mountains. I hope that I was able to give you just a few moments and transport you back in time. I know that there are many storytellers out there ready and willing to share their stories with your students, with your children, with your families and friends. Reach out to them. I'm sure they will want to share with you. And so, thank you, Colin. Thank you, Duncan, for hosting me today. Thank you to each and every one of you for taking the time today to sit and listen. I am willing to answer some questions. I want to just end by acknowledging each and every one of you for sitting through this with the way that I've had to present this morning. I'm not quite sure I understand why I wasn't allowed on Zoom today. I thought I'd been getting really good at it, but I guess not. Anyways, in our Ktunaxa language, at this time I would say, Hoyas tachas, which means I'm finished, I'm done. Thank you for listening this morning. Hoyas tachas. Colin, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Chief Joe. Thanks so much for your story today. If you could see the comments that are coming through, you've certainly had an impact in telling the creation story. People are leaving comments that they have been transported through your story. You're an excellent storyteller. That's being conveyed through the thank yous that are coming in. We know that this webinar was scheduled for an hour, and so if people need to go, thank you again for your time. Thanks to Chief Joe. But as Joe mentioned, he's willing to stay on for some questions. And so if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat function there at the side, and Chief Joe is willing to spend a few more minutes with us answering some questions. Joe, I think maybe my first question is, could you give us a sense of hope that you found through the land through the last couple months of experiencing this pandemic, that hope that you've personally found?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind when you're asking me that question is just springtime and the leaves. You know, right here where I'm sitting in my home at my kitchen table, looking out the window, I have so many trees that have come back to life that have their leaves on them, the new growth. And so I know that, you know, the cycle of life, it's what it's all about. It's beginnings and endings, and more beginnings and more endings. And so I'm seeing here, you know, life coming back to the trees in the springtime, and that gives me hope. Like I very much have hope there. And again, too, you know, I mentioned my brand new little niece coming to the world, joining us just yesterday. And so for her, there's no such thing as the new normal. This is the world that she's been born into, and this is the world that she will grow up in. And I know that she will become eventually, you know, a very old lady, and hopefully she will remember her uncle that used to tell stories, and hopefully that little girl will share my stories in the future. So that's where I get hope from.
Absolutely. Another question was, what are some of the important aspects of teaching students about land-based learning? Do you think, I know it might be a loaded question and hard to sort of pinpoint exactly, but could you sort of identify some important aspects for you in conveying land-based learning to students?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first and foremost, and really big reason why I chose to tell the story that I told this morning is the importance of understanding that, especially here in North America, the story of the land goes so much farther back than just discovery and fur trade and mining, that the story of the land goes back millennia, and that the people of the places that you may be in, you know, whether it be Ontario or South Carolina or Haida, they all have stories connected. There's place names that have existed for so long. I just acknowledged Haida. Back when I was a little boy growing up, we used to call that place Queen Charlotte Islands. I just about forgot what it was called in English, and maybe that's because it was only called that for just a short period of time. Haida is the name for that place. I shared with so many place names here, and so I just think that, you know, it's important, if you're going to be doing place-based education out on the land, that you need to remember and realize and acknowledge the nations that you're working on, whose homelands you're working on and in. And I think that, you know, there's so much more that could be learned that goes beyond the fur trade and mining, and yeah, so just be mindful that the nations have stories that are millennia, place names that go back millennia, and for me, that's always a good place to start.
Great, thanks, Joe. Another question came in: how can we better integrate traditional Indigenous stories into Western curriculum?
Yeah, so I guess my answer there is going to be one of the rules that I grew up with in my home community of Aqam. When I was growing up, the number one rule that was instilled in each and every one of us was, you must respect your elders. Respect your elders. And so I would give that advice to people, to respect the elders of the place where they are. Reach out to those elders, show them respect, show them that you very much honor their knowledge. And elders, part of being an elder is that willingness, that want to share your knowledge. You will find elders out there who are willing and able and ready and want to share their knowledge with your students. And so my suggest would be that number one rule: respect your elders.
Great, thanks, Joe. Another question is maybe more about storytelling. Someone was asking if you have any tips or tricks for storytelling, especially with primary and junior children.
Yeah, absolutely. And my answer is going to be funny this morning, considering what we've just gone through. Eye contact. Let those little ones know that they are important just by eye contact, each and every single one of them. Like, you can bring them in just through eye contact and seeing them and really giving them the story like it is a present. Every time I go into a classroom, the present that I have for them is my story, and I give it to them as if it were a present. And, you know, I also too, when I am storytelling with children, I give them my words. I believe that it is my job as a storyteller to paint pictures in their minds using my words. And so I'm not that type of storyteller that will go in and flip pages in a book and tell the story so that they can see the pictures. I'm also not that kind of story that goes in and uses puppets or costumes or anything like that. I just go in using my words. And so I very much believe that my job as a storyteller is to paint pictures in the minds of your audience using your words. And so give it like a present. And I believe that you will capture young people if you go in with that kind of attitude. They will see it, they will understand it from you if you go in with that kind of attitude.
Great, thanks again. And maybe just one last question. How moving forward with the times that we're in, and you know, outdoor learning as sort of an approach to reintegrating students into the education system. I mean, do you have any words of wisdom for how we can, as those of us educators who care about land-based learning and taking kids outside, how we can sort of take this opportunity to move education into and capitalize on taking kids outside and really connecting them to the land?
Sure. So right now, one of the main things that is being promoted with each and every one of us is social distancing. We are all being told to stay at least 2 meters or 6 feet away from the other person. And I know that right now in British Columbia, students are going to be going back to school very soon. They're going to be going back, you know, just 20% of a building or 40% of a building of students will be going back to school. And I've seen the suggestions about getting children outside, you know, as much as possible, the ones that are going back to school. Well, the thing is that those children do not have to social distance from trees. They can hug those trees. It's crazy, right? Tree huggers. They can lie down on the grass and get really close to the grass. They can even put their face in the grass. They don't have to social distance from the grass and the trees and the bushes. They don't have to social distance from the dirt. Shake hands with some dirt. That would be my suggestion. They don't have to social distance from nature. So go out and get as dirty as possible. Shake some hands, hug some trees. Because me personally right now, man, my heart is just aching for the hug of a human being. I mean, I'm so very lucky that I've been with my wife and my child and we're hugging all the time. But I'm that kind of person that likes human contact. I like shaking the hands of people that I meet. I like, you know, giving hugs to people who will allow me. And so I'm very much missing that kind of contact. And I think that a lot of our young people are as well. And so maybe what they need to do is to hug a tree.
Good advice. And everyone is agreeing with you on the chat. Duncan, any last words from your end?
I don't think so. That was fantastic, Joe. Such a great way of presenting that. And yeah, really, really appreciate that. We have had a number of people ask if we're recording this. And yes, we have, and we'll be able to share that as well as a number of other resources. Colin and I and C2C and other partners from coast to coast are working on resources for educators as we speak, and we'll get those out to you as they emerge.
Joe, thank you so much. We'll try to convey some of these comments that are coming in, but really appreciate your time this morning. And don't worry about Zoom technology. Always, like you just said, face-to-face storytelling is powerful, but very grateful to hear you this morning and take that in. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Joe, and hope everyone enjoys the rest of the day.
Yes, thank you guys. And yes, too, from me, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. And reach out to those elders that are just right next door. They're there, they're ready. I'll leave it at that.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.